I'd like to sing a Grateful Dead song in memory of Jerry Garcia, who was a huge musical influence on me, as he was on so many others. The song's called Ripple. If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken, perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know, don't really care. Let there be song to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no ripple caught, nor winds to blow. Reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, if your cup be full, may it be again. Let it be known there is a fountain that was not made by the hands of man. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripple in clear water when there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow. Reach out your hand. You who lead must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. La-da-da-da-da, la-da-da-da-da, la-da-da-da, la-da-da-da, la-da-da, la-da-da-da. If I knew the way, I would take you home.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Chudnovsky. Ruth and I met Bob in 1969, and from that time forward, we were very, very close. We want to begin by acknowledging that we meet tonight on unceded Coast Salish territory, and by reminding all of us together that this is a celebration of a wonderful life. So we invite you to laugh and to cry, to clap and to sing, whatever makes you feel like celebrating. Someone phoned this week to ask if tonight was a formal event. And the answer is no more formal than Bob was. If you think of him and how he would want to celebrate, then that's how we want to celebrate. After all the talking tonight, there's going to be a party, so we invite you to listen to all the talking and then get down with the party.
And hello, I'm Rita Chudnovsky, known to Bob and many of you here as Popo. And on behalf of Bob's wife and lifetime partner Eva, his son Michael, his brother Stanley, and our whole extended family, we very much want to welcome you here tonight. We especially want to welcome those who have traveled far through inclement weather, although the sun shone today, to be with us. Bob and Stanley's first cousin, Ann Rosen, who's joining us from Brooklyn, New York. Bob's nephew, Dan Rosen, my son, who's joining us from Toronto, and old and young friends and fellow musicians from the Puget Sound Guitar Workshop and beyond, from California, Vancouver Island, and Washington State. Eva wanted me to share how fitting it is tonight that we are gathered here in the Ben Chud Auditorium. Ben Chud was my father, David's uncle, and Bob always felt that Ben was one of his early mentors. My family first met Bob through my sister Gita shortly after he arrived in Canada in February 1968. He was one of the many draft dodgers and war resistors that my father and my mother Galia welcomed to the dining room table for roast beef, kugel, kasha, and politics. I was his friend before I was his sister-in-law. In the 45 years since then, we grew up together. We raised families together, we struggled together, sometimes with each other, but most often for a better world. And we began all too briefly to grow old together. A few days after Bob died, our very wise friend Judith Snyder said that for many of us, Bob had been an organizing principle. And as I thought about her words, I realized how true they were no matter how you spell principle. Of course, for all the teachers in the room, we'll spell it correctly. At the literal level, Judith and I both recalled that Bob had been the principle around which we purchased our kitchen chairs, the ultimate test being, would they hold Bob? But so much more importantly, Bob was the organizing principal and principal in his relationships with people. More than his size, it was his energy, his enthusiasm, his voice, and his spirit around which we gathered and around which we organized ourselves. His deep and broad impact on all of us is reflected in the outpouring of memories, condolences, and love that so many of you have shared, and for which there are no adequate words of thanks. And it is reflected here tonight. Sorry, we didn't know how many to plan for. As old and new colleagues and friends, colleagues from his teaching career, his union activism, comrades in his other political struggles, and fellow musicians gather to celebrate his life. And what a life it was. Perhaps Hunter Thompson was channeling Bob when he said, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather a journey to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride.'"
As you know, one of Bob's great joys was music and singing, and one of the greatest of his joys was singing with the Solidarity Notes Labor Choir. The choir is going to sing for us now.
And you're going to sing with us. We have a little song to teach you. First of all, we're going to sing it, and then we're going to sing half of it and teach it to you, and then we're going to teach the other half, sing with you. We're going to sing the whole thing with you. It goes like this. When you were born, you are, and no one, rejoice, rejoice. Lift your song when you cry, silence and you rejoice. When you were born, you are, and no one, rejoice, rejoice. Lift your song.
Next, we have a song of the Intifada by the great Palestinian poet Mustafa al-Kurd. The translation is 100 Good Evenings, the translation of the title, set to a very old melody. The poet begins with a lament for a people that spent its life in tents, and closes with a hopeful plea: rise up and build a new world for all our heirs, an organizing principle that I believe was deeply important to Bob.
When I think about Bob, it's his voice I hear first. But I've come to think that there was more than one voice, or at least there were many facets of that one marvelous, round, rich voice. For instance, there was the voice we never heard but only saw, the one he used for those endless fantasy arguments he had with himself. You'd be in the middle of a bike ride or a social event or a conversation and look up to see Bob's lips moving a mile a minute, his head bobbing in emphasis, his eyes focused somewhere else, his hands gesticulating to make a point that only he could hear. He was practicing, honing, shaping, sculpting the words he would use later in a discussion or a debate or a conversation. Now, of course, it could be a little disconcerting if you thought you were already having a conversation with him and he had tuned you out. And that happened to all of us. But that was Bob, And it brings us to the second facet of his voice. All that silent practicing and all of his study and political commitment made him, without any doubt, the best public speaker our union ever heard. At the mic, Bob was amazingly articulate and compelling. 700 BCTF delegates in a room would fall silent to listen in rapt attention to his argument. His debating voice was big, but his words were usually affable and informal. In more than 30 years of union activism, Bob never chose the easy issues to speak about. He debated our need to be a union when we had no bargaining rights. He defended the right to strike for teachers and other workers. He advocated for international solidarity when others found it uncomfortable. And always his voice was clear and principled and to the point. Now, despite all of that political commitment, the study, and the articulate debate, like all of us, Bob had his contradictions. So while he was a passionate and articulate anti-capitalist, Bob was also one of the world's great consumers. He had an attraction to toys and technology and purchasing new and exciting experiences that was remarkable. If you were selling computers or cameras or skis or bikes or bike racks or wine, then you were going to have a good day when Bob Rosen arrived. It was at the BCTF that many of us were lucky enough to share another aspect of Bob's wonderful voice. There are always resolutions and elections and debates at union conventions, but perhaps the most important thing that happened for decades at the BCTF was the singing.
Yes.
Can't you still see Bob? Sitting among 100 or 150 teachers jammed into a hotel room, a beer at his feet, sweat pouring off his forehead, a big grin on his face. He sang, and over the years, thousands of us sang with him. Rock and roll, old folk tunes, spirituals and blues and country songs, union songs and socialist hymns. That singing, and at the center of it, Bob Rosen's voice, nourished and sustained a generation of struggles for social justice. His voice built a community. Bob's singing voice enriched us spiritually and emotionally in a way that all of us will remember forever. At social events, Bob's voice was almost always the focus of attention. That was because he brought to every conversation an amazing level of energy and enthusiasm. He was excited about everything he did, and everything he learned, and everything he planned. And one of Bob's great gifts was that it all rubbed off and inspired us to our own energy and our own enthusiasm. Our daughter Anna put it this way: he had a willingness to love and learn with abandon, with others and from others. He took tremendous pleasure and pride in that learning and that loving. The last facet of Bob's voice I want to talk about for a minute was the voice he used when he spoke to young people. Bob was never more genuine. His voice was never more clear, never more understood and appreciated than when he was talking to our children, all of our children. Michael, of course, but also Brianna and Daniel and Anna and Benjamin and dozens and Michael's boyhood friends And dozens more young people had the pleasure and privilege and gift of Bob in their lives. One of them said, "The main thing is what it felt like to be loved by him. He made you feel important, loved, safe, and smart." He certainly did. He made us all feel important and loved and safe and smart. It was that voice. To Eva, and to Michael and Tracy and Janine and Brianna and Stanley and Popel and Daniel, we all hope that your memories of Bob and the wonderful years you spent with him have helped to strengthen and sustain you and will continue to. We, all of us, celebrate Bob Rosen, the great man and a great voice. One of Bob's dearest friends is Bill Hood. They shared so much, teaching, politics, and music, and so much more. Bill wants to say a few words.
Thank you, David. I welcome you all tonight, and I'm very proud to be here with you. I got to know Bob Rosen in 1974 when I was finishing university, and eventually our families lived very close, a few blocks away from each other. Terry, my daughter's Kate, was born 6 weeks after Michael, and our families did many, many things together. And of course, all of the other political and musical things that we did. And I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about what Bob meant to me. Our friend Alan Zisman likes to quote Walt Whitman saying, "Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I'm very large and I contain multitudes." Bob, like each of us, contained many contradictions. He was what many people loved about his country of birth, the United States. He was what some people despised about the United States. He was what many people admired about political activists. He was what some people hated about political activists. He was a comrade ready to give his all for an agreed upon cause, and at the same time he was an individual in pursuit of his own vision and his own desires. He was someone for whom family was both his greatest love and a source of much challenge. He lived life large, every day, for better and for worse. In the end, though, I don't really think that he had a role model that I can think of. He made it up as he went. He had many heroes and many inspirations, but none mixed the variety of passions that he did. Some were more political, some were more musical, some were more literate, some were more sincere. Some believed more in what they sought to be true. Some were more brave. Some felt a greater need to be involved. Some were more kind. Some were more dedicated. Some were more proud of their heritage. But no one that I know was all of these things at the same time, pushing 10 out of 10. As his song about Diego Rivera said, "The power so strong tonight, with your big fat heart and your eyes on fire, we're bathing in your light, your courage, and your desire." It's true that he wrote that about Diego Rivera, but it's also true about him. This naturally leads me to the part that was the most profound for myself over the recent years, which was singing together. He was the person that I would actually rely on to check my musical ideas with. He was an immensely literate person who read voraciously in all types of writing. He wrote articulate and passionate articles, speeches, opinions, and songs. And he sang wherever he could, by himself, with one other person, with a small group, with a crowd, with teachers at a convention, with people at a workshop, with people on a picket line, in a choir, with a band, with children, for people who were dying, or as a solo performer, or simply to practice and search for and find and refine his own voice. Bob also listened to a lot of music, and although I would tease him a huge amount about his passion for bluegrass, I, who listened to a fair bit of music myself, shared a range of musical interests with him that I don't think I'm ever going to match with anybody in my whole life. In the end, I think that what we both wanted to do was to hear and make relevant, literate, and beautiful music whenever we sang, and each of those things were equally important to us. It was, of course, a given for Bob that for Bob, politics were embedded in all culture, especially music. But a quick political song was a zipper song for him, produced for immediate use, to a point, but really not of too much lasting artistic value. When he talked about these songs, it was sort of more of a tactical thing for him because they really lacked profound poetry. Bob had more time for the deep, passionate writings of someone like Bob Dylan or Graham Parsons, works that lasted as poetry and reached out for timeless truth. At the same time, Bob had lots of musical heroes. Some of them were people you could guess, people who had lots of records out. Some were also people that were not well known, people like Zachary Richard or Buddy Miller, or those countless friends that he would tell me over and over again about at the camps that he went to, like Puget Sound and Georgia Strait. People he felt who were amazingly talented and should have much wider respect, support, and recognition. It didn't really matter in the end to Bob how famous you were in the rest of the world. What mattered to him was what you were daring to do and how he felt about it. He was used to being out there where there wasn't a large crowd, and he was also used to having to trust himself. So we started singing together more regularly. He had retired and I lived close by, and we seemed to find some harmony together. And then our friend Jane asked us to sing a song for her partner, our dear friend David King's memorial. And it just went on from there. At the start, for me, it was just him and me. He, of course, had been singing forever. We got together officially to practice to sing for the memorial for David, and then we liked to practice so much we just kept practicing. We didn't have something to practice for, we were just singing. I actually used to feel that it was like therapy for me, and I was getting filled up in a place that I didn't know I was empty in. Bob, of course, had other plans. He was always taking his music everywhere and anywhere that he could, and I was fortunate I got carried along in the wake. Soon, we were a band, and our feelings of music just grew deeper and deeper. Those who ever heard Bob sing will be able to tell you that he was the real deal. The house could be on fire, there could be a hurricane outside, mass chaos in the streets, but Bob could still sing, if needed, loud and clear, and always on key. So for a harmony singer, it's perfect. You can just be beside him, and he will carry it, and you can just sort of hide behind him. So, for the last number of years, I have pretty much only ever sung with Bob, and this is so true that I'm really not so sure how I'm going to continue on. I have great musical friends who I truly enjoy singing with, but I so totally measured and calibrated my voice in relation to his that he's gone now, and I don't know what I'm going to do. You may have lost a friend or a comrade or a mentor or a singing partner, but for me, I lost the person who I relied on to know what was working for me and if what I was reaching for had any initial merit. I know I'm never going to share the same intuitive depth of philosophical and political agreement and musical taste and love of life that I had these many years with Bob. Our voices, when connecting as they could, felt for me like a brother's handshake, a father's smile, and a daughter's kiss all at the same time. And when we sang together, I felt both that I had always known that this might be possible somewhere in my life, and yet every single time I was surprised by the depth, vitality, and freshness that I would find again and again. Didn't matter how many times we had sung the song. So, in the midst of this horrible sadness, there are some small mercies, and these are the kinds of things that I hang on to. With our band, the Ground Partisans, we have been working for quite some time to make a CD, and we were actually hoping around this time to be holding a CD release party in a very, very different kind of a situation. So in November, we were wrapping up the recording sessions. Simon Kendall was graciously helping us to do that. And we already had 14 songs down, and there was some discussion about how many you should put on a record, and officially only supposed to put 12, and we already had 14, so we had two too many. And, but Bob was insistent that we had one more song that we had to do. And it was a song that I had written. And we had agreed that it would be the title track of the record. And we'd been trying to record it for quite some time. And I wrote it a number of years ago, actually in 2005 when the teachers were on strike. I'm a teacher. Since we started recording, every once in a while we would try and get a version of it, and for whatever reason, usually it was my guitar playing, but for whatever reason, we weren't able to get a version. And then finally, now in retrospect, almost unbelievably, we got a version that we really liked. That was 7 days before he died. On another front, the Ground Partisans played at a recent benefit for COPE, and Bob was very excited about this, but for a number of reasons the show didn't go very well for us. It was a fabulous evening and lots of great music. We tried really hard, but most people couldn't hear us, and you know, that's the way stuff goes like that sometimes. But fortuitously, we already had another show planned, and so we don't play too many shows, and so that was a good thing. And it was going to be like 2 weeks later. So we went to this show, and it was in a very small venue, and we all felt very relaxed. It went very well. And fortunately for us, Alan was smart enough to record it on video. And now it's on a bunch of places online, and friends of Bob Rosen. And again, this show was recorded 2 weeks before he died. And it was one of the best things that he did. Some of you may also know that Bob played at hospices for people with terminal illnesses. He would talk to me about this when we would get together and sing, saying he wasn't really sure if the music made connections with people, but he trusted that it would, because he'd just sit in the hallways, and he wouldn't really play for a crowd. He would just play in the hall, and people would be around, and the music would go into the rooms, and things like that. So this summer, he was approached by a person he didn't know and asked if they would do him a favor. A family member of theirs had just passed away after spending some time in the hospice that Bob sang at, and this person drew some very important support from the Grateful Dead song Ripple that we had the good fortune to hear tonight. And they asked him if he would come and play for them at a family memorial service. Again, he said of course he would, and he was absolutely blown away by the 300 people who he did not know at all. He had never met before, being so warm, so supportive, and so encouraging about the things that he did, and it entirely validated his belief that he made a difference when he sang. And I think it actually did it in a way that lots of other things couldn't have. So that happened this past summer, and again, he's been singing for a long time. So from now on, for me, singing's actually going to be quite a different thing. I'm going to have to think about it in a way that I've never actually had to think about it with Bob. If he was singing and I was in the room with him, I felt like I could instantly find a part that would fit with his voice. And I didn't really care that much if it sounded any good to anybody else. I just knew it would make me feel good and that Bob would be happy that I was there. And that was good enough for me. Some people talk about finding somebody who completes you in some way in your life. Bob completed me musically, as a musician, as a singer, and as a songwriter. And for me, music is one of the most important things that I do to stay relaxed and stay focused and nurture my spirit. So Bob's death leaves me with a very big hole that is going to be very difficult to fill. I love Bob in a way that I know I will probably love very, very few people in my life. Bob, I thank you for your friendship, and I'm grateful for our time together. I will never forget the intuitive harmony that you helped me to learn to validate in myself. I will always miss you whenever I open my mouth to sing, but your memory will always make me smile. I will also try to keep your imagination, courage, and power alive whenever I sing or talk about the potential of teaching. To do this, I'm going to draw some solace from the verse of the Bruce Springsteen song that we sang together. We're actually going to sing tonight. It's called The Ghost of Tom Joad. And when we sang it, we would always split the verse. I would sing half and he would sing half, and it goes like this. Tom said, "Mum, where a cop has beaten a guy, where a hungry newborn baby cries, where there's a fight against hatred in the air, look for me, Mum, I'll be there. Where there's somebody fighting for a place to stand, or a decent job, or a helping hand, where there's somebody struggling to be free, look in their eyes, Mum, you'll see me." The Tom Joads of the 1930s are, of course, now long gone, but thanks to art, literature, and music, and the power of creative imagination, they will never really die. And likewise, as long as people sing about the promise and the passions of life, or make music celebrating those who dare to take a risk for social justice, or offer the helping hand of solidarity to someone in need, my friend Bob Rosen will never die. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Ken Klonsky is a friend of Bob's from the choir. He, like many of you, received Bob's travel writing, and he is a tremendous fan of that travel writing and wants to share some of it with us tonight. Ken.
Well, friends, I come not to talk about Bob, but to let him speak through me. On arrival. Amigos, what a strange and wonderful place this is. Everywhere the food and the wine is outstanding. At a winery on the outskirts of town, featuring a huge old wine barrel with a massive carving of Dionysus on the front, wrapped in blankets thoughtfully provided, we ate lunch in the garden, spinach ravioli and cream sauce, and much wine to drink. To die for Italian food. A pizza at Puerto Madero that was the best I've ever tasted. A bottle of excellent Argentine Malbec to wash it down. Elegant, beautiful restaurants and cafes on virtually every block. Every morning a great buffet breakfast. At a casual proletarian sort of place, the huge bear of a maitre d' teased by playing various tricks, like bringing a giant bottle of beer to the table when I ordered cerveza. Had the best steak dinner ever, a huge steak grilled to perfection. The best steak I've eaten in my life. Enough to feed both of us. Then on to a fine lunch. More wine. Views of the vineyard and the snow-covered mountains. High-end wines, legendary stuff, served by a charming wine hostess with a good sense of humor. I am going to have to stop this level of indulgence at some point. But the food and wine here is so good that I'll just have to do penance later. I had a happy pizza, meaning that it had a liberal sprinkling of ganja amidst the cheese and tomatoes. It took a while, but by the time we got back to the hotel, I was thoroughly ripped and couldn't manage to get to sleep. My young friend, Benji Chodnovsky, told me that I shouldn't apologize for writing about food. Hey, it's the most interesting thing. Oh my God, the best meal we've had so far. Beating our famous Christian constant lunch that I wrote to you about earlier. I had lamb loin with thyme that was grilled in an exquisite wine sauce, preceded by snails in a Chardonnay sauce that was piquant with citrus. Eva had a great salad with prosciutto. And she tried the bone marrow appetizer. Roasted hunks of beef bone loaded with fatty marrow. A bit much for Eva, but I thought it was great. Spread on that wonderful baguette bread with big flakes of sea salt on it. For dessert, I had an orange chocolate mousse with red currants on top. We went looking for a restaurant called Damando al Pantheon, which we found in Benji's slow food restaurant book for Italy. With some help from local waiters, we found it without much trouble. And they even had a table available right away. No outdoor tables in this very traditional place, only a small, lovely old room with paintings on the wall. An intelligent and not too haughty waiter brought us half a bottle of Montefalco 2007. Best wine we've had on this trip. Light in the Italian style, but with some real bite and complexity. Great stuff. I had a simple pasta dish made with wild mushrooms, saffron, and garlic. Great. And Eva's pasta was even better, with arugula, lemon, and parmesan. She had some grilled vegetables for her main course, terrific, and I had guinea hen cooked with mushrooms and black beer, very good. For dessert, tiramisu with tiny wild strawberries. You know what? Enough. Visited the National Museum before heading home to luxuriate at our wonderful hotel, complete with swimming pool and beautiful gardens, with wooden lounges hidden amidst the thick foliage at the edge of the pool, and a bar with good food and good drinks. We found a restaurant spontaneously just down the street from our hotel, with the ubiquitous sidewalk tables and a cheery waiter in a Hawaiian shirt. The menu looked good, so we sat down and ordered up. The waiter was relaxed and spoke good English and had a great sense of humor. Their Cabernet Malbec blend was so good that we had to buy a bottle for 46 pesos. By the time we got back to town, we were thoroughly pissed and needed to take a nap before going out to dinner. Really? How wonderful all of this is. Wish you were here to be with us. Write if you have a mind. Tus amigos, Roberto y Eva.